As you know, we're doing things a bit differently this year, and sometimes it places restrictions on us, but other times it gives us opportunity to do things that we weren't able to do before. So I've always wanted to introduce overseas students especially to the city of Sunderland, because they might spend a whole year and not get to see all the things that the city's got to offer. It's kind of difficult to do it during a normal induction week when people arrive late or they're sorting out the bank account. So now they're trying to do things online. It gives us the opportunity to do it virtually. And if you look on the university website, just go and search for City Virtual Tour, you'll find some really good footage, but it's only 1 or 2 minutes long. So what I want to do with this today is to actually do it in a bit more detail, and I'm not a historian or the absolute authority on the city of Sunderland, so what I'm going to do is just give you a little personal tour from my take, the kind of things that I find interesting in Sunderland, and hopefully you'll find them interesting as well. As I was saying, it's kind of like a personal tour, what's of interest to me. So our starting point, we're going to work from our starting point back to the university. The starting point is way out towards the sea direction, and we're starting here because this is where I started in Sunderland many years ago. I won't tell you how many, but my first visit to Sunderland was for a weekend yachting, and I actually stayed on the marina here a lot of years ago. And the one thing that hasn't changed round about the seafront area is this marina, because way back then there's still lots of boats in this marina, and it was still a big marina. So I stayed overnight in one of these kind of small yachts, and I had to swim out. No, I didn't swim out. We got out to the yachts and stayed overnight in the marina. But around it has all changed. There's sort of nice apartments up on the right hand side here, and at the back was all pigeon lofts and allotments and barbed wire, Alsatian jobs. But as you can see now, it's quite attractive with an Italian restaurant at the top. The lifeboat station's moved in here, and at the front there, at the back, there's a Snow Goose Cafe, which is quite popular and sells ice cream and hot drinks and things. Lovely place to come and sit and have a view of the marina. And you look now, one of these boats is going out, looking very elegant. Okay, so this has all been transformed, and as well as the immediate area of the marina, we kind of swing around, we'll see there are lots of new housing developments here, nice apartment blocks which give you a view way out to the sea. And this marina is kind of cut off the main stream of the river, so as we go around we'll be able to see what is the main mouth of the River Wear. And it used to be, when I came down first, it's full of big oil tankers, cargo ships, and they're about 2 deep either side, so it's totally transformed now. It's different, but it's still quite active in the dock. If you look directly across from the marina, we could see the dock. But what we're going to do is a special treat for you. We're going to take you up on a flight, and we're going to start right at the seaside of the mouth of the River Wear and take you right up to the Wearmouth Bridge, up and down both sides, so you could get a complete overhead view of this without us having to go and stop at each individual point. Okay, now as we're going to set off up in there, you can see we're down at point 2, Roker Pier, and we're going out, up, into the North Sea, and we're coming back through the outer harbour. We'll focus, we're going to go up the south side of the River Wear, just to your left, and look at some of the points of interest there. Now you'll see right in the middle and in front of us is what used to be the South Pier. That was the outer limits of the harbour, but they built the outer harbour now, and it's much easier for big ships to come in and out, protected from the rough seas. And you'll see all the sand over there. It tells you it's a really low tide, because this is supposed to be a a deep water harbour, but the tide's so low you can actually see that. And so looking at this site, I'm trying to show you things which might be of interest to you. I'm actually seeing things which I've never seen before. So you've got these white warehouses by the docks there, and presumably these are primarily for storage. But if you see the expanse of water in from the sea, that is the port of Sunderland, Hendon Dock being the most part of it, and that's where cargo is dropped off and loaded on. As you can see, it's fairly quiet just now. It looks like a long channel, almost like a one-way system, but it is sealed up at the far end. And on a nice day, it's rather hazy in the distance just now. You can see it all the way down to the estuary of the River Tees, which is about 35 miles away. And you see it's it's not a completely flat coast. There is a kind of sort of low cliff going with a flat top going almost all the way down the coast to the south. You see the inside the docks now, and there are a couple of boats on the left hand side, or should I say the port side and the starboard side, but not much sign of activity. Now what is really surprising to me is, again, something I haven't seen before, is that Hendon is what, for lack of a better description, we might call it a fairly rough area where these high-rise flats are, but between the docks and these high-rise flats there's quite an expanse of green, which I have never seen before, and I've never been there. But Sunderland hosted the tall ships races about a few years ago, and there are various events taking down there, like choirs and fun fairs out in the open there. So I'm telling you places you might want to go and visit. I think I'll go and visit there because it's a nice expanse of greenery, and looking at from above it'd make an excellent golf course. Okay, and you can see the bottom end of the dock from this angle. Okay, as we're going up the quayside here, way back when I first came to Sunderland, it was really busy. There were giant cargo ships 2 deep either side of the river, and you can see it's pretty vacant just now. You get cargo ships coming in here, these standard warehouses. You get cargo ships coming in here from time to time, but often most of the activities we get big dredgers coming in. The river had to be dredged of sand and silt. You got silted up in sandbanks pretty regularly, and that has got a lot worse now because it doesn't get dredged as much as it used to be. But when they were building ships, the channel needed to be deep enough to get the ships out to sea, so often they have these big dredgers coming in and out. Okay, so going beyond the cranes there on the quayside, we look in the distance, we see a small fish quay, and there's 1 or 2 bars beside the sort of council housing there, and with people smoking outside now. It almost looks like the south of France. A little balcony in the little hilltop overlooking the river there. I'm looking over to the university campus with the Boar's Head Bistro. Never was a bistro before, but again, I've never been down there, but it looks quite attractive from the riverside. And you see get a greater feel for the extent of greenery there. And we're now at these high-rise flats. That's the area called Hendon. There's a little fish quay there. Not a lot of big fishing boats. You can see some of the small motorboats coming in now. It's not like 20-30 fishing boats. It's these small boats bringing in their lobsters and crabs from fishing on the rocks around there. And there's some of the old housing being made to look more attractive and modernised. And you've got 2 new office blocks. There were restaurants in there, but currently not. And this brown building to the right of us just now is brand new, and it used to be sort of rough ground there where we parked the car for the football, and can't do that anymore because God knows what it is though. And if you look just to the sort of far top left just now, that's the Eagle building, the famous old building in High Street East, and it is refurbished about sort of 7 or 8 years ago to convert it back. It's a kind of conferencing facility, and is a restaurant. It's used for events like weddings now. And also, speeding past, some of you will already be familiar with some of these buildings. There's Scotia Quay going steeply up the hill, student residences, and this is Pan's Bank, which was built before Scotia Quay. And it's a lovely design with nice smooth curves. And this dates back to when the university first started building down here. With the shipyards having been closed, there's European money available to modernise and build these really lovely buildings. Now there's a road goes up the bridge there, and down there you see a little dry dock, and that's where one of the basins where the ships were fitted out after having been built further up the river beyond the River Wear. And on the left now we see the very tall Echo building. We'll talk about that later. It's an interesting building, and it's the Wearmouth Bridge. And as we spin round quickly to go back down the river, you'll see the Stadium of Light, that big white building there, which is where Sunderland Football Club play their football. More of that later. Now, these nice buildings with the curved roofs are the University of St Peter's campus. There's a nursery for small buildings there, and the City College, but they're now an integral part of the university. And there's a nice car park where you have to pay lots of money, usually that's chock-a-block. But bang in the middle is an old church which dates from about 400 AD. And that is kind of very significant building, St Peter's Church, in terms of the history of Christianity in the northeast of England, because there's a monk called the Venerable Bede stayed there, and he wrote a lot of the history of. So, and because of him, we know a lot about the history of Christianity in the UK, partly, especially in the northeast of England, places like Holy Island, Lindisfarne. Right, we're now going on to the main university buildings, and there's quite a nice cluster there. There's a nice area in the middle, which is very popular with skateboarders. So we have the School of Business there, and there's computing, the David Goldman building, there's the Arts, Media and Design building, and down there's the Tom Cowie Lecture Theatre right in the middle, which holds about 450 people. And we've got the kind of library and canteens right down by the riverside. And we're moving along. By the way, there's a nice pathway there. You can actually see people walking along, but it's a nice leisurely, pleasant walk until the people always cycle along or roller skate along, so you have to keep your wits around you. That goes all the way from the Wearmouth Bridge right out past the marina to the sea. We now see another not so attractive looking cyclist bombing along there, and another one coming the other direction. See that sports area? It doesn't look pretty like these very elegant buildings. It shows the university's commitment to the students' welfare. So, as you can see from the markings, that could be used for tennis, five-side football, hockey, basketball, netball, you name it. And there's another area being carved out there for a future building. I suspect it's not another school of this, that, or other. It's maybe a kind of social type area. We'll see what happens there. And right next to it, it's a different style, because it wasn't part of the university originally. This is the National Glass Centre. Sunderland was chosen for the where the National Glass Centre would be for its history in glass making, dating way back from early Christianity, and the stained glass windows, and a big company called Jopplings, which was famous for its glass. And when this built, they made big for the factory making sheets of glass, but now it's more kind of craftsmen showing their skills, and you can go in and watch them making it. There's a nice restaurant there, and that roof is actually sheet glass. So it's under repair just now, but most times you could go onto the roof and look down and watch people dining about 80 meters below your feet. If you're like me, you'll find that a little bit scary. Okay, so we're moving away from out east past the St Peter's campus, and this is a residential area, and these are all new houses since the banks of the River Wear were kind of redeveloped post shipyarding time. The ships were built way up beyond the Wearmouth Bridge there, and this part of the river was just used as a fitting out of the boats. So quite attractive path. It was a very pleasant walk, and lots of bushes and things there. And as we go beyond this, there's some of the getting close to the marina again, and there's some of these more modern houses with attractive seaside location. So as we keep moving around, whoa, we're back at the marina. Okay, so I was talking about earlier about how it used to be, and it's been landscaped to the top side, and there's a balcony there for overlooking the marina. It's reasonably attractive from here, but that was a fairly rough area with barbed wire, allotments, pigeons lost, as I was saying, all guarded by these nasty Alsatian dogs who would bark at you as you walk by. Not a pleasant place, but looks quite nice now. And the building there is houses, place where you get all your stuff for the yachts, and the nice cafe there where you could sit outside and have a hot spicy apple, for example. The hairdressers. Up in the top floor there's a nice Italian restaurant. And believe it or not, the lifeboat is stationed here. The lifeboat used to be a big building to be launched off the beach or off the pier, but now it's inland in the shelter of the marina. It's a small inflatable thing. So these, you can see the crane where it's dropped into the water, and it goes speeding out to the rescue of mariners in distress. Now, the Grey Goose Cafe, yeah, that's a lovely place. It's very pleasant. You're down there on a Sunday morning, sitting outside with your scones and tea, or whatever you like to have. Yeah, so that sort of lifeboat kind of goes off from there. It's a small inflatable thing. It wouldn't fill me with great reassurance if I was shipwrecked, but apparently these small boats are better for getting close up to people who are drowning or getting really up close to a boat that's in distress. Okay, so we're kind of looking out at the marina, looking out south now, and we're kind of just returning to where we launched here. And if you look very, very closely, there's some figures down on the end of that. It's not the South Pier, but it's very close to it. And I think look closely, I think I'm standing there waving to you, but yes, that's me. Right, so we landed here. Right, we've moved on now from down the marina, and you've seen up the river, mouth of the River Weir. So we moved up to the top here, just outside a place called the Bungalow Cafe, if you want a nice full English breakfast. But by the wonders of modern technology, we're going to look at one of Sunderland's almost like hidden attractions. Most people don't realise it's got a beautiful beach and coastline which stretches all the way up to the mouth of the River Tyne. So we're going to go up in there again to actually see that. That saves me, an old man like me, walking, which is really good. I strongly recommend that you come out here and go for a walk on a Sunday morning or something. It's really attractive, and even in the winter it's very bracing and it's still attractive. So we're not going to do a 2-3 mile walk up and back down this morning. We're going to take you up in there and give you a nice guided tour. Okay. So here we are up in the skies again, and we've fast-tracked about 3 or 4 miles up the coast. We'd go all the way up to the Tyne estuary to the north, and where you get some low cliffs, but we're now tracking back down south, looking west at the seaside. And we're not in Sunderland yet. This is a little village. Doesn't look like a little village, it looks pretty big. It's Whitburn, and you can see it's the cliffs with a flat cliff top, very much as it is to the south of Sunderland. But what is very characteristic about here, the sea goes up to the foot of the cliffs, And you can see just now, as we were pointing out before, it's a very low tide and you're seeing all the rocks and the sand, and you can just see the sea lapping up there. In the winter the sea comes right up to these low cliffs, and it'd be quite impressive when there are big waves breaking up on the cliffs there. So we're still in Whitburn, and there is Whitburn's almost deemed to be part of Sunderland, but if you kind of look out you could see there are some. You can now see the boundary between Whitburn and nice cricket club down there. You can now see the boundary between Whitburn and Sunderland. So there is some space between. And Whitburn is officially South Tyneside. And here we have Sunderland starting at Seaburn, which is part of Sunderland. And that's the north side of the. If you're walking along the beach, normally you can go up this far and turn back or move on to Seaburn. Right, so there's quite a lot of houses there. Some of that was university land, which has just been sold. And you can see there's that housing development that is part of Seaburn, but there's another gap with fields here before you come to Sunderland proper. And that big flat building is Morrison's, big supermarket, if you ever get fed up of going to Tesco in the town. But look at all that lovely sand there. Beautiful for a walk, except occasionally you see people walking dogs. There's some, I can see a dog running on the sand there. I don't like dogs, but there are parts of the beach where dogs are forbidden, where people don't notice that. So a big redevelopment going down there. There was a little restaurant with railway carriages. It's now made of blocks. This is Seaburn Hotel, which was the Seaburn Marriott. And this flat area here is where they have the kind of air show every August, and it's full of airplanes. And people are lined up along the beach, and the planes go by and doing acrobatics. So it's a really something to see. It was the first week in August. I think it's a bit earlier now. So a lot of these used to be hotels along the front, and this is almost like a seaside resort, but a lot of these buildings along the front are kind of like old folks' homes. So if you become an old folk, you might be stuck in one of these houses, but at least you get a nice view. Right, we're coming closer towards the city, and as we move down here, we're coming to the River Wear, and you can see how big Sunderland is, the extent of all the housing behind the coast here. And that little wooded area is Roker Park. Roker Park was the home of the Sunderland Football Club, but there is actually a park called Roker Park. It's got a nice pond and kiddies railway train in the winter. And again, so there are actually still some hotels left here, and right down the front a lot of restaurants, and it's been tidied up. So this is actually the north side of the outer pier, you see. Normally that's surrounded by the sea, but we've got an extreme low tide, and it's a nice walk down there. You can go all the way around from the Wearmouth Bridge and round along the seafront here, and even in a quiet summer's day, there are quite a lot of cars down the seafront. So this is back to where we were before, and we're back to looking in up the River Wear. That's where we started a previous trip. Okay, so we're now down at 3, and we're moving up now to the Stadium of Light. Back on planet Earth now. We've moved around and up the river to outside of the Stadium of Light, which is the home of Sunderland AFC football team. And this stadium was built in the late 1990s. And since that time, the football club have stayed mainly in the Premier League. They've suffered 1 or 2 relegation, but of late they're having a rough time. They're way down League 1, which is the 3rd tier, which isn't so good, but they're still got a Premier League stadium. As you can see behind me, it's quite an attractive building, and there are 1 and 2 little statues at the front and gates depicting the close links that they have with the community, and particularly the historical link with the coal mining and shipbuilding industries. So this is the west stand, which is the main stand, but it's a kind of bowl shape, so it's attractive all the way around. And it's not just a football stadium, they have big concerts in there. If you've heard of Take That, or Bruce Springsteen, or Rihanna, they've all been in there, and many more, Oasis even. And also they have conferences in there, so it's not just a Saturday afternoon only big stadium. So quite a multi-purpose building, and quite attractive, quite a landscape in the city. And for those of you from overseas, you'll be used to places of worship like mosques and temples. And in the UK we have our minsters, Sunderland's got a minster, and cathedrals. But sport, football in the northeast and the working class communities originally, football's a big thing. So this is almost like a place of worship, and people take the football very seriously. Not Premier League, but it's still well worth a visit. So in your year here, take a point to the stadium of light. We can't fly over the football stadium. We've got quite quick look looking in. It's has a capacity of 49,000 people, and that's what it looks like, not full, but inside. And it was originally built to house 36,000 people, but it's been expanded quite a bit. We're still on foot now. We've moved round from the west side of the stadium, the main stand, to the north of the stadium. And what you'll see here is some of the more recent developments, part of the integrated plan to develop this area of the city, and in particular activities related to sport and leisure. So this extension to the football ground was an add-on that raised the capacity from 42,000, it was 36,000, they increased the size of the inner bowl to 42,000. With this add-on, this north stand, the capacity is now 49,000, and part of the original design, which was built with the idea that England would be hosting the World Cup sometime, which, believe it or not, was a possibility way back at the turn of the century. So you could extend this all the way around. It's designed so it could go right up to 64,000 if need be. And another feature of before we look at the more recent developments, we look at another of the original part of the stadium, which tells us a bit about its origins. It's called the Stadium of Light. That name arises, a very strange name, arising from the fact that it's put right on top of an old coal mine, because Sunderland, as you know, is all about coal mining and shipbuilding. So these used coal mines are still down there, and you get gases coming out from the beds of coal, and if it's all trapped underneath the ground, there's potential explosion. So these two edifices there, they're not modern art, although they do serve that purpose, but inside there are vents, so all the gases from underneath the ground, underneath the stadium, is vented off safely to air, and there's no build-up underneath the stadium. So it's perfectly safe that way. So if we kind of swing around a bit, we'll see some of the more recent developments. The university used to have its own swimming pool, but there's no need for that now, because equidistant between the city campus and the St. Peter's campus, we have an Olympic-sized swimming pool, the Sunderland Aquatic Centre, as well as an Olympic-sized swimming pool in there, which if you're a top athlete, you could go and have a nice swim in there, do several lengths, get very tired. They've also got nice gym facilities and keep fit facilities. So that's very heavily used. The stadium car park, which used to be empty on non-match days, is actually quite full now with people who actually go into the aquatic stadium. And beyond that, you see a big rectangular block, which is the Beacon of Light, which is part of the Foundation of Light, which is the football club's charity to help sports education, link education and sport in the community, mainly looking at underprivileged kids. But this beacon of light is an extension of that kind of sports education. Also, if you see the size of it and the shape, it's got gigantic five-side football pitches which are heavily used by people in the community, including my own overgrown children. Very briefly now, before we move on, just round, if you're swinging round from the aquatic centre, we have this Hilton Hotel here, which is equipped to service the football ground. It's busy all other times, and it's they have conferences inside the stadium as well, so it's really handy if you're running a conference to be able to use that as well. And looking to the side here, the Black Cat House, which is the main ticket office, although now a lot of it's done remotely through a company called Ticketmaster, where you get all your music event tickets as well. Okay, so we stopped here just to explain that we can't go up in the air over the city centre, so the next part of the tour will be like a walking tour through the city centre, which taking in one or two places of interest for it. As we walk across the bridge from the football stadium into the city centre, we haven't come to jump from the bridge, the Wearmouth Bridge, which looks rather like the bridge in Newcastle in Sydney Harbour. We come to look at the River Wear from the other side. You've seen it from there, but now we're looking back out to the sea. And one or two extra things I want to point out here. You'll notice it's rather noisy in the background. The main artery road into the city centre is the Wearmouth Bridge. Swing around, you'll see what it looks like. Down there, I want to pick out something that's quite significant. Not what's there now, but what was there in 1988. As you might know, Sunderland was famous as an industrial city, and in particular for its shipbuilding and coal mining. But way back in 1914, Sunderland was in fact the biggest shipbuilding port in the entire world. But it all ended in 1988, when down there, I remember it, there were 6 red and white ferries built for some Danish owners, and they've been built up the river. They've been moved down there to be fitted out. It's beside the warehouses on the shore there. And what happened was that the Danish ship owners said they were substandard. And unfortunately, that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and the shipyards were in a poor financial state at the time because of overcapacity in shipbuilding worldwide, and places like Korea and Poland, they had to close down. So 1988 was the closure of shipbuilding on the River Wear, and these were the last boats built, were berthed down there. Quite clever, these Danish guys. When the yards went to administration, they came back a few months later, and they bought the ferries on the cheap from the administrator. So they're actually quite happy with the state of the boats at that time. So the building you see over there is an apartment block, and it's just one of the typical developments down here when they converted the old warehouses used for the shipyards and the storage for the docks, and they're converted into luxury apartments. If we swing around again, you'll see some of the stuff we've seen before. You'll see St. Peter's campus down there and out to sea again, and we've already talked about these Pans Banks, Scotia Quay University residences where some of you might live. And if you look down here, down below the bridge, you see there's quite a sort of hike up to the top of the bridge, and on a personal note, that's where my sons and I park when we're going to the football match, and I find it quite strenuous walking up that hill, falling onto my sons who are striding up there manfully at quite a pace. Again, talking of apartment blocks, this wasn't a warehouse. It's a kind of new building that's put up with the intention of it being prestige apartments. It's the Echo building. It's on this site. There's Jopling's glassmaker. Glassmaking, obviously, again, is important and was important in Sunderland. But the Sunderland Echo newspaper was built on this site, so it's called the Echo 24 site. For various commercial reasons, it's no longer seen as a prestige, the place to live. In fact, a lot of our students live in there. But you see the car park below, but just above that is an Asiana restaurant which does kind of fusion food from India and China and all over the Far East. So I talked to some of our students about that who come from these areas, but they say it's rather on the expensive side and they prefer to cook on their own. But I like it. It's a nice place and you get a nice view down the river, especially late in the evening. Should you walk down from the university past the Brewery Hotel, one of the first buildings you'll come to is this really nice old church. Except it's not just any old church. In 1992, it was a highly auspicious year for Sunderland. Not only did the Polytechnic become a university, the town of Sunderland, at the time the largest town in the UK, became a city. And in recognition of Sunderland becoming a city in 1997, we couldn't have a cathedral because we're in the Diocese of Durham. So the St Michael's All Angels Church here was named Sunderland Minster. So it's a really nice church and you should maybe take a look inside, and the university has its annual carol service in there. Now, the Minster is off to the right as you walk east through the city, but if you look to your left you see what is not quite such an attractive building. This monstrosity, believe it or not, is one of the most important buildings in Sunderland. The big rectangular block, not the bar at the forefront of many bars in Sunderland. It's quite an important building and we'll see why in just a few seconds. Now, if we continue walking 60-70 yards down eastwards and look to the left again, we see quite a different building, quite an attractive building. This is the front side of what is Sunderland's Empire Theatre. It's the largest theatre between Edinburgh in Scotland and Leeds in the middle of Yorkshire. And that gigantic rectangular block you saw on the back of the building serves very good purpose. It was installed in the 2000s, and the reason being it has lots of machinery and equipment in there which allows the stage hands to lift and move big sets really quickly, so that the theatre could take some really big shows, and as such the Ambassador Theatre Group brings many musicals of London's West End direct to Sunderland. So since that time it's been even more popular. This is part of the city's move to have a cultural zone, and if we just swing to the right a little bit we see the Duncow pub and the building over it. It's an attractive building which has been refurbished, and a lot of money has gone in to preserve some of these nice old buildings that were characteristic of Sunderland previously. But swinging around again we see more signs of investment, which is supposed to be a cultural zone. The building in front of you is we've got a big theatre, an Empire Theatre, but this is another major venue which is going to be a kind of 300 or 400 seater arena, and not only that, is a good example of the university working well with the city council, and in future you might be having lectures down there for when there are really large classes, and maybe even you might have graduation there instead of the football stadium. And swinging around a little bit more, we see the old fire station, which is a legitimate place to name the fire station, as well as a bar and restaurant in there. You've got various arts and cultural things like a dance studio. As you can probably hear and see from my shaky hand, it's a nice sunny day, but it continues to be windy. And moving down, we've got there's an old building which has been taken over by Hayes Travel, one of the UK's biggest travel agents, who bought out a lot of the Thomas Cook offices when they went defunct. And the building in front was an old bar called the Londonderry. It's reverted to its original name, the Peacock, and as you can see, the building has been cleaned up and looks quite attractive. Just going to bypass this part of the town on the right. There's quite an imposing looking building over there. It's the remnants of the Crow Tree Sports Centre. When they extended the Bridges Shopping Centre, we swing there, we see the entrance to the indoor Bridges Shopping Centre. They kind of decimated the size of the Crow Tree, but they keep that half of the building, and we've got this green kind of parkland area just in front of it. Obviously, the reason they did away with the sports centre is they got much more upmarket and modern sports facilities over at the aquatic centre and the Beacon of Light. Moving on down the road a bit, slightly to the left, moving east and down to the top end of High Street West, I come to an area which is the major centre for development nowadays in 1920. This is known as the Vox Brewery Site. Wasn't another 1992 thing, it was 1999. Sunderland's famous Vox Breweries was on this site and it was closed down. Now, it's a prestige site right by the river. It's just the river beyond these buildings there, river weir beyond these buildings there. So for many years it's suffered from planning blight. Tesco wanted to build a major superstore there, but they weren't allowed to because it wasn't the right kind of building for such a prestige site. But now, over 20 years later, we see that there are these big office blocks going up, which, depending on your ideas, may or not be considered to be prestige. The one on the left has been operational for a while. It's been let out. The two buildings in front belong to the city. The civic centre, or the city hall as it's now called, will be in these two buildings. And on the front here is Keele Square, which has been landscaped as, or should I say, paved over, and it's got the names of all the boats that were on the paving stones, the names of all the boats that were built in Sunderland. And just swinging behind me, we see Hayes Travel again, and behind me is where is the offices that are being used for the construction project. But people who've been in Sunderland for a while will know this building better as the nightclub and bar called Annabelle's and Idol's. I would say infamous nightclub and bar, Idol's and Annabelle's. Very well known to the youth of Sunderland. Okay, so looking now, we're just looking down what's High Street West. Is another of the old city centre streets, which, like the Bridges Shopping Centre, which has been pedestrianised. And we'll walk down there as we continue round the city. Right, we've walked down 100 yards or so down High Street West, and we're moving on through to the entertainment zone. I couldn't let things pass without kind of looking at this iconic building here. I'm kind of going through the city looking at things which I find of interest and might be of interest to you. But definitely kind of something which is of interest, and a focal point for students is the mighty McDonald's, High Street West. Even if you're a vegetarian, you might be found in there sometime soon. Moving down from High Street West and the mighty McDonald's, we cross Fawcett Street, and looking back down here we see what used to be the main shopping street in Sunderland, which used to be very busy. And now all the shopping's moved indoors, just behind these buildings, in the Bridges Shopping Centre. So saw quite a few shops here, but it's not the bustling shopping centre it used to be. But if you do look above, you see some quite nice buildings, and the council are spending a fair bit of time. This was the Bank of Scotland, Royal Bank of Scotland. If you look up there, you will see, if I can zoom in, an elephant in this building. It's called the Elephant Tea Rooms, and it's one of the projects going on to smarten up the city and restore some of these old buildings. Again, moving down High Street West, we're moving from the Cultural Quarter, it's called, the Riverside Quarter, Leisure Quarter, call it what you will, into the Sunnyside Quarter. And I couldn't, just like McDonald's, I couldn't let this one pass without stopping at this restaurant here. It's called Casper's Desserts. I was introduced to it by some MSc students of ours 2 or 3 years ago, and just very much to my taste. It's desserts only, and there's some lovely stuff in there, but I'm told for students it's a bit on the expensive side. Very nice if you could afford it. Peering in the window, it looks very nice, doesn't it? Moving down again, we'll come to a place which is popular with students and very much within the student pockets, the Empire Cinemas, and they show all the latest films, and it's nice, luxurious, big cinema. And if you want, you can even get a job there as a cleaner early morning. Well, some students have done that before, and just swinging around past the bowling alley where there's some building going on just now. We see another entertainment place, the Groveler Casino. Again, don't go in there, you'll lose all your money, unless, like one of our students from 2019, 2020, you actually work in there. And briefly now, before we turn right and go south through the Sunnyside Quarter, just some of the restaurants that you'll find close to the cinema. There's Frankie and Brenny's, an American chain I believe, and Nando's, which is very popular with students for reasons which are totally beyond me. And going back past, that's the route into the casino, that's the 10-pin bowling alley. And down there was an Egyptian restaurant. One of our students was a manager there, which was quite handy at times. It closed down, which is rather sad, but apparently it's now opened up as a Lebanese restaurant, so you might want to check that one out. This area here is Sunnyside. It used to be full of, it's a legal or office area, full of estate agents, lawyers and things, but now it's been all being refurbished. There's some nice restaurants here, and the big building there is the old post office. So we're going to go right down south through Sunnyside to the other side of the bridges, where we'll see Mulberry Park and Sunderland Museum. Coming down the bottom of Holmes side to the southeast corner of the city centre now, just looking in a basement, find Dakwa, which is one of Sunderland's more highly rated restaurants and very popular amongst the affluent people around, but not to be recommended if you're on a student budget. But swinging around, see something more interesting. This is the Sunderland Winter Gardens, which is got high temperature and tropical plants inside, and it's bolted on to the Sunderland Museum, which you can't see just now for that bus. So we'll take a little detour, we'll go around the other side and look at the building from Mulberry Park. If we're lucky, we might be able to pop inside for a little while. Okay, we're now on the other side of the Winter Gardens. You can see from this angle what a nice building it is, and in front of it this lovely little pond with ducks and even swans, and this apartments there used to be the Mulberry Park Hotel. It's been modernised now, and instead of the old hotel it used to be on that site. And again, you could see the museum beyond the Winter Gardens, and swinging around you get a view of just a tiny corner of the park. Lots of swings, roundabouts, statues, war memorials, lots of nice things there if you want to have a walk around it sometime. Just a little bit more of the park and the pond. And again, another view of the museum. Don't be fooled by the palm trees. We don't get tropical weather in Sunderland. Again, looking back to the museum and again the winter gardens. And swing around slowly. Another view of the pond and the park beyond. It goes quite a long distance into the south. You get a nice walk in here. Okay, sorry if I sound a bit muffled. I've come into the museum now and I've got a mask on. And I couldn't walk by without going into the coal mining exhibit part of it. And you'll hear in the background a brass band. A lot of the coal miners had brass bands to go to their rallies and their May Day galas. And we're just looking here at one of the exhibits. It's got lots of old miners' helmets and miners' lamps. Okay, so there's a whole section of the museum devoted to the mining heritage of Sunderland and surrounds. Now, while I'm looking for the shipbuilding exhibits, let's have a quick look inside the winter gardens, and you see that got lots of very humid in here, and oh my God, I think this is supposed to be a dinosaur or some kind of creature. It's not real. Okay, so you see got some nice tropical plants in here. That's a lovely place to stop and have a coffee. Right, now I know the shipbuilding's right on the top floor. So swinging around and walking around, you see a couple of the boats here. And look in the far corner, there's a really big one, so we'll take a stroll over. And that's what it looked like down by the river in days gone by. And this is the kind of size of ship that was built. You can tell by the proportions it's a big one. Built by Lough and Sons. That was one of the. It all became part of British shipbuilders, but Lough and Son was one of the big yards on the river there. You see there's quite a lot of detail on this ship here.
Because his dad lives with him.
What's this guy saying?
It was a lodger, and so the dock is door. Some bloke that even left home looking for work. You know, going down south, looking for work in the building trade down London way.
I think it's something to do with employment problems in the north.
People say, they're all lazy idle loafers on the door.
Some class warfare stuff, I believe. Okay, let's move on. Okay, we just come in off Fawcett Street, and this, believe it or not, is the railway station. There's, it's down at, it's got a basement level, so there is quite a big station there. It's got trains to London, all the way to London or Newcastle or Middlesbrough. It's not pretty, but it gets you there. So this is a part of Market Square, because we swing round. We'll see Market Square, and we're going to go in to the left from Market Square, back up towards the university through the Bridges Shopping Centre. Here it is, we're just outside the Bridges Shopping Centre, so what we're going to do is we're going to walk right up through the middle, as you can do if you want to take a shortcut to and from the university, and I'll have a look at some of my favourite little shops, and also we'll take a little spin out to the right to go to Tesco, where a lot of our students do their shopping. Okay, it's kind of late in the afternoon, so it's rather quiet just now, but I can assure you it's very, very busy at lunchtime and at the weekend. Look in one or two shop windows. That was interesting. We didn't see any of the bridges because I was banned from filming. Looked like a terrorist or something. Can't be too safe these days. I guess it doesn't happen to Tarantino and Scorsese, but it gives us another view of the bridges. So you missed out on the delight of boats and confectionery stall and Tesco and a really nice little bookshop and an excellent shortcut through Debenhams Superstore. So I'm sure you'll be in the bridges lots of times, especially if it's raining. Highly recommend a shortcut right through the middle of the bridges. It's all undercover. Okay, so we're out on the south side of the bridges now rather than going straight through it and up to the university, so it allows us to see a couple of other different things. If we look back again to the south, this point used to be another cinema. It's a nightclub or some kind of entertainment venue, and beyond, at the very end of the pedestrianised building, you could just see the curved roof. That's the bus station. And again, this area is full of bars and restaurants, so we'll move up there to our final stop before going back to the university. A quick mini stop here. This is Shandy's restaurant. It's Persian, I believe. It's just a small restaurant, but it's opened up relatively recently, the past 2 or 3 years, and it does seem to be popular with our students, as are the buses, which get absolutely everywhere. Okay, as I said, I used to be just Indian, Chinese and Italian restaurants in Sunderland, but we're seeing quite a variety now of Mexican, Lebanese, etc., etc. Now, for a very final stop on the part of our tour we have to do on foot. This is where it all started. We've come up Homeside through Vine Place and we're turning back to go north towards the university. And this is the Galen building. And this was the home of pharmacy at Sunderland from the early 20th century right up until about 1992. The university felt it was difficult to expand and refurbish in this building, so they built the new scientist complex, and this was sold to a developer for hotel and leisure purposes for £1 million. The developer got a license for selling alcohol, etc., and he sold it for £2 million 2 or 3 years later. There is there was a Mexican restaurant in the basement and a nightclub, but currently it's unoccupied. Nice old building, so that's where it all started. And from there you walk to another 50 yards, then you cross the Ring Road and you're back on the city campus. But we're not going back to the city campus just yet. We're taking you way up Chester Road at inside the campus, and we go straight out. We're going to the very, very west of Sunderland to see what's beyond. The building there was the Penshaw Monument, which looks a bit like a miniature version of the Parthenon in Athens, and beyond that is the whole of the northeast region to the south. And we're now spinning round from the Penshaw Monument to the north, and you'll very flat land around right at the coast in the kind of Weir Tyne estuary area. But you see the white building there is the Nissan car plant, where one of Sunderland's biggest employers, other than the university and the hospital, and they make cars which they supply the whole of Europe from the Nissan factory, which is the most efficient car plant in Europe. Going around, you see this is just about 3 miles out from the university campus. You see we're in beautiful countryside, so just take an opportunity to get out of the city and have a walk out in this rolling green land here. We're looking back into, even from this distance you can't see the buildings, and this used to be coal mining territory with all the green little lake there, which is artificial. It's part of Harrington Country Park. It's turned an old coal mine into a nice park where you can have a lovely walk. So we get attacked by dogs. Right now we're looking south and southwest, and that is A690. That's not A690. If you follow this road, you can go all the way out to Durham and the A1, which takes you down to the south to London, or up to the north, way up to Edinburgh. So it's showing you Sunderland, but beyond there is the northeast region of Mulberry Park. A little bit more of that. We're making another film about that next year. So once you come back next year, you can see that take the time while you're here to see more of the northeast region. Make sure you get to other places in the UK. Okay, so from Hanshaw Monument, you can now head down to the campus. Here we are now. We've come to the end of the tour. We're back in from the kind of western limits of the city and the gateway to the region beyond. So we hope you'll see more of that during your year here. But we'll come back in now into the city centre at the university. So it's the end of our tour, but this is where it all begins for you in the sciences complex behind us. So you'll be having a tour, you'll be spending a lot of time in there, but during your induction week you'll be getting a tour of the sciences complex and all the laboratories. Also we'll take you for a tour around the campus, which will either be in person or we might do another little live video session. So you'll be seeing lots of the campus. It's the end of our tour. I hope you've enjoyed it. You could go and revisit it anytime you want on Canvas. And now it's where it all starts.